Hi, everybody. Welcome to Road to Disclosure. I'm the host, David Sloan, and the video blog that I'm creating here is going to be a source, just one of many out there, to help understand what's transpiring globally. A lot of the information and knowledge that has been kept secret for a long time is trickling out now via insiders, whistleblowers, and whatnot. And I want to be a source for people to utilize in their search for truth. So hence the term Road to Disclosure. It's a journey. It's a trip to discern your own truth, and all of the information that's being disclosed now is highly regarded amongst us truth seekers in the awakening community out there. So I just kind of want to add my voice to the rest. So this video blog is going to be a record to assist those in their own search for truth. So just to give you a little background on me, I've been researching topics, conspiracy topics, for roughly 5 to 6 years. And pretty much these things range anywhere from global economics to geopolitics, and then delve into kind of a more esoteric fashion. Anything conspiracy regarded, assassinations of presidents, super entities having control over the world, whether they're religious based, financially based, military based, whatever the case is, seeking out secret societies that might have influence globally, and then also anything dealing with the paranormal. So this video blog will actually cover that, but I'm probably going to get to those topics a few episodes in. Hopefully each episode will be roughly 10 minutes long and will pertain to a specific topic each episode. So the paranormal subjects will obviously discuss UFOs, extraterrestrials, spirituality and consciousness, but the beginning episodes hopefully will cover kind of what's transpiring globally now through the global economics, through geopolitics, what's going on in the United States, where this is actually taking place. This video blog is taking place in the United States. So so hopefully I'll break it down where everyone can then search a specific topic and episode to their liking. So this first episode is going to pretty much cover the super entity that controls the world, or what many people reference as New World Order, or they utilize the term Illuminati. I want to actually reference it as the Cabal, and acknowledge that this group, tenuous group that's connected via multiple factions, has been around for a very long time. Hopefully showcase the idea through credible witness testimony, but prominent figures throughout history who have acknowledged a lot of this, thereby giving some validation to its origins. So we'll revert to some of the sources that I utilize on a daily basis. Real quick, you can see one of my favorite sources to utilize is David Wilcock, his website, divinecosmos.com. He has an online book he actually created via his blog. It's called Financial Tyranny, and he summarizes a lot of things, but one of the things that he brought to my attention a while ago was this study that was conducted out of Switzerland via the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. The study was actually led by scientists by the name of James Glatfelter, and the results were published in the New Scientist, which I guess is a respected science magazine. So they did this study utilizing supercomputers. You can actually see the article here. Gladfelter's team unleashed a vast armada of supercomputers on Orbis 2007, which is a very elaborate database of the top 37 million corporations and individual investors worldwide. So what this study did, found a total of roughly 43,000 transnational corporations in the database, and it was revealed that a core of 1,318 companies directly controlled 20% of the world's wealth, which is obviously significant. However, those corporations also appeared to own and control the stock in a majority of the world's largest companies, whose profits added up to an additional 60% of global revenues. You can see in the New Scientist article, they say although they represented 20% of global operating revenues, the 1,318 corporations appeared to collectively own through their shares the majority of the world's blue chip and manufacturing firms in the real economy, representing a further 60% of global revenue. This core of 1,318 companies had interlocking ownerships. Each of the 1,318 had ties to 2 or more other companies, and on average they were connected to 20 other corporations. I'll show you the article that was actually done at a New Scientist here. This is actually the bottom, but you can see some of it, and I'll actually provide links in the on the channel, YouTube channel. So you can see through this article, the study's assumptions have attracted some criticism, no doubt, but complex systems analysts contacted by New Scientist say it is a unique effort to untangle control in the global economy. Pushing the analysis further, they say it could help to identify ways of making global capitalism more stable. Yeah, right. So James Gladfelder was quoted as saying, reality is so complex we must move away from dogma, whether it's conspiracy theories or free market. Our analysis is reality-based. In previous studies, they have found that a few transnational corporations own large chunks of the world's economy, but they included only a limited number of companies and omitted indirect ownerships, so they could not say how this affected the global economy, whether it made it more or less stable, for instance. One of the major revelations from this study, which we'll go back to David Wilcock's blog page, and you can see the 1,318 companies were actually interconnected even within a super entity of 147 corporations. They were interconnected with each other in an even more tightly knit pattern. So, as David Wilcock says, put it simply, they all owned each other's companies, and that's what typically they do. They buy into each other's companies, so they obviously profit from one another. If one company does well, the other will, because they own ownership. They have stock within the company. And then, so it says, together the super elite 147 corporations directly earns a whopping 40% of all the wealth in the world. This study, I think, was done back in 2011, I want to say. So that number can certainly be higher. And so David Wilcock continues to go on and explain the web of entities that are within this super entity. What they control, what kind of parts of the world that they own, whether it's finance, whether it's healthcare, whether it's those are the two big ones, healthcare and finance. He actually goes on and explains some of this in the so to acknowledge the scientists, to be fair, did say that this could all be due to the magic of chaos theory. They said this could all be a logical phase of the self-organizing nature of complex systems, such as the global economy. Obviously, companies want to profit. That's their number one goal. So the article in New Scientist, such structures are common in nature. The Occupy Wall Street claim that 1% of people have most of their wealth reflects the logical phase of the self-organizing economy. So the super entity may not result from conspiracy. The real question, says the Zurich team, is whether it can exert concerted political power, which obviously if you have money, you're going to pay off politicians to vote a certain way. through lobbyists. Lobbyists obviously trying to direct public policy by buying off politicians. One of the guys says in the article, feels 147 major corporations, super entities, is too many to stay in collusion, but they still compete in the market, but act together on common interests such as profit. All right, so to kind of give this more validity, this paper, I think it carries significant influence, and you can actually see the actual paper itself, and there's a link in David's. You can see this is actually the paper. The abstract, the structure of the control network of transnational corporations affects global market competition and financial stability. So far, only small national samples were studied. There was no appropriate methodology to assess control globally. So this study presents the first investigation of the architecture of the international ownership network, along with the computation of the control held by each global player, finding that the transnational corporations form a giant bow tie structure and that a large portion of control flows to a small, tightly knit core of financial institutions. This is pretty substantial in my opinion, and most of the board of directors within each of these corporations, they're actually they're on these individuals are actually on multiple board of directors in different corporations that are all interconnected with each other. So in terms of directing policy and directing just an effort to either make money, because it's not all about money. I know that's going to be something I'm going to cover later, but money is just a tool to these guys, a tool for control. And you can actually see this list at the end of the New Scientist article recognizes the top 50 of the 147 super connected companies, Barclays being number one. You can see obviously some of the other ones, JP Morgan Chase is in there, Vanguard Group, Merrill Lynch, Deutsche Bank, Credit Suisse, a lot of big banks obviously, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. So you guys can look it over when you have free time. But to acknowledge, these controlling entities who, whether they're part of a corporation or not, this has been going on for a while now. And to kind of explain this away, aside from buying politicians off, I'm actually going to go to this page here. You can see some of the quotes from major insiders, whether they're presidents, whether they're senators, people that would have direct knowledge of some of this and speak out to the public to let them know. One of the quotes here, you can actually see Edward Bernays, the father of the public relations, in his book, Propaganda. Conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We're governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we've never heard of. This is kind of in reference to the big wealthy families of the world, Rockefellers, Rothschilds, and whatnot. I'll actually go into that a little bit later, but just to give you some prominent figures who have acknowledged this throughout history. We're going to go to President Woodrow Wilson, 28th U.S. President. He said in his book, The New Freedom, since I entered politics, I've chiefly had men's views confided to me privately. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacture are afraid of somebody, are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. You also have President John F. Kennedy acknowledging the secret societies and whatnot. I'm going to actually have an episode on JFK, so we won't discuss that right now. You have the 7th Vice President of the United States, John C. Calhoun, is quoted as saying, "A power has risen up in the government greater than the people themselves, consisting of many and various and powerful interests combined into one mass and held together by the cohesive power of the vast surplus in the banks." Below this, you have New York City Mayor John F. Hyland, who was mayor between 1918 and 1925. The real menace of our republic is the invisible government, which like a giant octopus sprawls its slimy legs over our cities, states, and nation. The little coterie of powerful international bankers virtually run the United States government for their own selfish purposes. They practically control both parties and control the majority of the newspapers and magazines in this country. They use the column of these papers to club into submission or drive out of office public officials who refuse to do the bidding of the powerful corrupt cliques which compose the invisible government. It operates under cover of a self-created screen and seizes our executive officers, legislative bodies, schools, courts, newspapers, and every agency created for the public protection. There's a few other people which I'll let you guys actually look at yourselves, acknowledging this shadowy government that pretty much has its fingers in all aspects of society. I mean, throughout the course of at least the last 100 years, they've amassed even more power. And you can, again, suggest that it's all just profit, an agenda of profit, but when you have the people involved in this, such as the Rockefellers, acknowledging this outright, and David Rockefeller actually does this in his memoirs. Some of these quotes out of his memoirs, he acknowledges how grateful he is. He's grateful to the Washington Post, New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the lights of publicity during those years. But the world is more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodetermination practiced in past centuries. This acknowledging that these elites are smarter than us and they know better than the pawns, the little guys who apparently don't have any influence on society at all. You can acknowledge in one of his other quotes here that he stands guilty of trying to amass this power and influence on the masses. In this quote, he says, "For more than a century, ideological extremists at either end of the political spectrum have seized upon well-publicized incidents such as my encounter with Castro to attack the Rockefeller family for the inordinate influence they claim we wield over American political and economic institutions. Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists and of conspiring with others around the globe to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, one world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and I am proud of it." So he's obviously recognizing this. Now he calls himself an internationalist. They're more like globalists than internationalists. But you can acknowledge that he's admitting that he's striving for influence and control of world government, striving for one world government. And that's David Rockefeller, which we'll get into in a little bit. One of the things I do want to actually finish off this episode with is a couple minutes of the Thrive documentary. If you've never heard of the Thrive documentary, produced by Foster and Kimberly Gamble, they do a tremendous job of recognizing the influence and control that the elite have on everyday life and explain it much more, articulate it much better than I can. So just hopefully listen to this video here real quick. For at least a couple minutes, we'll finish off the rest of the episode. So without further ado.
As difficult as it was for me, I have come to an inescapable and profoundly disturbing conclusion. I believe that an elite group of people and the corporations they run have gained control over not just our energy, food supply, education, and healthcare, but over virtually every aspect of our lives. And they do it by controlling the world of finance, not by creating more value, but by actually controlling the source of money. When I followed the money, I found that it took me up the levels of a pyramid. Here we are at the bottom level going about our daily lives. Above us is government, people who are given a monopoly on force and use it to tax and control us whether or not we agree. But who controls them? At the next level are the corporations. Many would say that it is now corporations and not nation states that rule the world. They call it a corporatocracy. To acquire the world's resources and control the markets, this corporatocracy must have access to cheap money. The big corporations get their loans at special rates from the big banks, which means that those who control the major banks, the moneyed elite, ultimately control the corporations. As I've followed the money, I've learned that almost everything I once believed about money is simply not true.
It's interesting how few questions we actually ask about very everyday things, like when we go into a bank and we ask for a loan of, say, $50,000, £50,000, what actually happens? You see, most people live their lives based on a kind of vague image of what happens. What actually happens is you ask for £50,000, they type into your account £50,000. That's all they do. They don't mint any coins, they don't print any money, they don't move any precious metal anywhere. They just put £50,000 into your account on a computer screen. From that moment, you start paying interest on money that has never, does not, and will never exist.
It turns out that banks actually have about 9 times as much money loaned out as they have on reserve in their vaults. This is possible because of what's referred to as fractional reserve lending. The way it works is that the Federal Reserve, or the central bank in any country, is legally allowed to determine the amount a bank must have on reserve. In the U.S., it's currently around 10%. So if you deposit $10,000 into the bank sets aside 10%, or $1,000, and then loans out the rest of your money. The way it works is, say another person comes into the bank and asks for a car loan of $9,000. At this moment, the bank loans out the $9,000 from your original deposit. It isn't there anymore. The borrower then pays the person selling the car, and they go deposit the money into another bank, which is part of the same central banking system. This $9,000 is treated as a new deposit, and the process continues. The money gets redeposited and reloaned until the initial deposit of $10,000 becomes $100,000. The banking system just created $90,000 by loaning out your money. Apparently it began with the goldsmiths in the 17th century, when people were trading in gold. Gold was heavy to carry around, so people stored the actual metal in vaults and traded receipts instead. Those receipts were the first paper money. Since only a few people would withdraw their gold at any given time, the vault owners, basically the new bankers, began creating receipts for more metals than they actually held. They loaned out those receipts and charged interest on money, gold, that they didn't really have. That's how our so-called fractional reserve system was born. In this system, the bankers get to make up money out of nothing, while the rest of us have to work hard to earn it. It has created a modern form of serfdom where the mass of society is now working to pay off their debt to the banks.
All right, so you guys get a little idea there. I'm actually going to save more of that for the rest of the for the next episode, and kind of go from there. So thank you guys for watching this video blog, and you can certainly comment as long as it's a positive comment. But yeah, thank you for watching. Again, I'm just trying to be an extra voice out there, source. There's plenty of us out there who are seeking truth, who are trying to disseminate a lot of information that's being released, that was once suppressed, that's now actually becoming more prominent, because the search for truth allows us to transform our world the way we want it to be, how we want it to be changed for the better. So it's important that we all kind of become aware of the things that have been going on, that have been, the nefarious agendas by the elite. Without our awareness, it's going to keep going on the same way it's been going, and we end up just being enslaved that much more. So hopefully with this blog and many others, we can kind of change things for the better. But I'll discuss more of this in later episodes. So thanks for watching, guys.